Before we begin, a quick note. This podcast was created with NotebookLM to bring Marine Corps Doctrine to life. Whether you're a Marine brushing up on the basics or someone brand new to MCDP 1, this overview will help to connect you with the core ideas that shape how Marines think and fight. Semper Fi, Marines, and enjoy.
Welcome, everyone, to another deep dive. Imagine just one book, right? Published decades ago, but it still fundamentally shapes how an entire military service thinks, how it acts today.
It's pretty remarkable stuff.
Yeah, something so foundational, it's not just, read, but it's lived. There's this great quote from Clausewitz, which this document really embraces. The political object is the goal. War is the means of reaching it, and the means can never be considered in isolation from their purposes. That really sets the stage for what we're digging into.
Perfectly.
Today, we're taking a deep, kind of unvarnished look at the U.S. Marine Corps Capstone Doctrine, MCDP-1, Warfighting. Now, for those of you already familiar with the basics, or active duty Marines, veterans, military scholars out there, this isn't going to be just a surface skim.
No, we're going deeper.
Exactly. Our mission here is to move past just what it says and really explore the philosophy behind it, the why. Why was it written this way, and why does it still have such a profound influence on how Marines think and act, especially when you look at modern operations and leadership. It's a chance to revisit it with fresh eyes, pull out those nuances that really empower warfighters.
And it's amazing how much impact this one document has had. It started life as FM-FM1 back in 1989, right?
Right, the original.
Then it got that major revision in 97 to become MCDP-1, and then more recently, the gender-neutral update in 2018. But those prefaces, the foreword by General Krulak and preface by General Gray, they aren't just fluff. They lay out a really clear intent.
What do they emphasize?
Well, General Krulak pointed out that the original 89 manual literally changed the way Marines think about warfare. It kicked off energetic debate, apparently even influenced other services. Yeah. And the 97 revision wasn't about throwing that out, but more about refining things, enhancing the description of war's nature, clarifying different styles of warfare, and really sharpening those maneuver warfare concepts.
They stressed how to read it, didn't they?
Critically important. They said it's not meant as a reference manual. It is designed to be read from cover to cover. That's a big ask.
Yeah, unusual for doctrine.
And the expectation was for all Marines enlisted, commissioned everyone to read this book, understand it, and act upon it. That's a powerful, almost personal directive for a piece of doctrine. It sets a very different tone. #, the enduring why, unpacking the nature and purpose of MCDP-1.
Okay, let's really get into this then. It is pretty striking, like you said, that the Marine Corps starts its core doctrine not with, how to assault a position or organize a platoon, but by really dissecting the nature of war itself. Why do that? Why start there? What does MCDP-1 say is the necessary base for the development of a cohesive doctrine?
It's fundamentally about building a shared understanding, I think, a common starting point. Before you can talk about how to fight, you need agreement on what fighting actually is.
Makes sense.
So MCDP-1 defines war pretty straightforwardly at first. A violent clash of interests between or among organized groups characterized by the use of military force. Okay, basic. But then it pushes deeper right away. It gets to the essence of war. A violent struggle between two hostile, independent, and irreconcilable wills, each trying to impose itself on the other. That's pulling straight from Clausewitz, his Camp idea, the two struggle like wrestlers locked together.
Okay, so it's a contest of wills.
Exactly. And the crucial insight there is that the enemy is not an inanimate object to be acted upon, but an independent and animate force with its own objectives and plans. That changes everything, because it means war is inherently dynamic, interactive. It's not chess against a static board. It's a brawl with someone who's thinking, adapting, trying to hit you back just as hard. Your actions are never in isolation. They're always reacting to the enemy and trying to make the enemy react to you.
So understanding that dynamic is the foundation.
Pretty much. Without that shared grasp of this core, messy, competitive human interaction, any doctrine you build on top would be, well, shaky, built on sand, like you said.
That definitely complicates things right off the bat. It sort of throws out any idea of war being clean or predictable. So what are these inherent characteristics, these pervasive attributes MCDP-1 talks about that make war so difficult?
Yeah, MCDP-1 is brutally honest about the messiness. It doesn't shy away from it. The first big one, maybe the most famous, is friction.
Clausewitz again?
Yeah, he called it the force that makes the apparently easy so difficult.
Yeah.
It's just Everything that can go wrong will go wrong, basically. It resists action, it saps energy, it's everywhere, you can't escape it.
Can you give some examples of what counts as friction?
Oh, sure. It's countless things. Mental friction, like a leader freezing up, indecision. Physical friction, enemy fire, obviously, but also just rough terrain, mud, a vehicle breaking down, external stuff like bad weather or just sheer chance bad luck.
Or even things we do to ourselves.
Absolutely. Self-induced friction, unclear orders, overly complicated plans, lack of coordination. But the key thing MCDP-1 stresses isn't eliminating friction because you can't. The greater requirement is to fight effectively despite the existence of friction. It's about developing the will to push through it. And, just as importantly, trying to increase the enemy's friction, make things harder for them.
How do you develop that will, though?
Well, the document says only through experience can we come to appreciate the force of will necessary to overcome friction. That points to realistic training, tough experiences, maybe even combat itself. It underscores that war isn't just physical, it's the psychological grind, and the side with the stronger will to just keep going despite all the small, frustrating failures often wins.
That really hits on the mental and emotional side. You mentioned will to overcome friction. Does MCDP-1 get more specific on how that will is cultivated beyond just experience?
It does, maybe more implicitly later on when it talks about leadership and training. It's not like there's a willpower class. It's woven into the whole system.
Yeah.
It's built through really tough, realistic training that pushes people right to their limits, makes them make decisions under stress, when they're tired, when things are confusing. It's fostered by that command philosophy we'll get into, encouraging initiative, accepting that people might make mistakes, trying to do the right thing.
Building confidence.
Exactly. Building confidence, resilience. And fundamentally, it's about that shared ethos, esprit de corps, believing in the mission, trusting the Marines next to you. MCDP-1 understands that will isn't just something you have or don't have. It's forged. Forged through hard preparation and that shared sense of purpose.
Right, so friction is like this constant background noise, this drag on everything, often small things, but they add up. But then there's the fog of war. How are leaders supposed to operate when information is always incomplete, the situation's changing constantly, and chaos just seems normal? Seems like it would lead to paralysis.
And that's a huge focus.
Yeah.
How do you train leaders not just to cope, but actually thrive in that soup? MCDP-1 breaks down several connected things that create this fog: uncertainty, fluidity, and disorder.
Okay, break those down.
So uncertainty, that's the classic fog of war. You never have perfect information. Decisions are always based on incomplete, often wrong, sometimes contradictory intel. And the document highlights nonlinearity.
Nonlinearity.
Yeah, the idea that minor incidents or actions can have decisive effects. Tiny things can change everything. An IED, one squad's actions, outcomes,
Right.
can hinge on the actions of a few individuals.
So how do you deal with that uncertainty?
Yeah. You need simple, flexible plans. You plan for likely problems. You have SOPs, standing operating procedures for routine stuff. And crucially, you foster initiative among subordinates. You push decisions down.
Okay, that makes sense. What about fluidity?
Fluidity means war is always moving, shifting. It's a continuous, fluctuating flow of activity, replete with fleeting opportunities and unforeseen events. Things change fast, so you need flexibility of thought and the ability to adapt. You can't be rigid. There's this rhythm, fast, slow, mass disperse, as each side tries to gain an edge.
And the last one, disorder.
Disorder. MCDP-1 just states it flat out. War gravitates naturally toward disorder. Plans will go wrong. Orders will get misunderstood, comms will fail, especially on modern battlefields, which can be really spread out, chaotic.
So you just accept disorder.
You accept it, yes, but MCDP-1 goes further. It says we should seek to generate disorder and use it as a weapon against our opponent.
Turn the chaos against them.
Exactly. If you can handle chaos better than the enemy, their own disorder becomes your advantage. Think about hitting their logistics. It doesn't just destroy stuff. It throws their whole system into confusion, creates friction for them. This whole picture, uncertainty, fluidity, disorder, it emphasizes complexity. War isn't centrally controlled. It emerges from lots of local actions, local decisions based on incomplete info.
That really pushes back against a purely scientific, predictable view of war. But thinking about all the tech we have now compared to 1997, drones, AI, amazing sensors, does that human dimension, that stuff about danger, fear, will, Does it really stay as central as MCDP-1 claims? Is technology starting to overshadow it?
You know, it's fascinating how relevant MCDP-1 remains on this. It's absolutely uncompromising. It says flat out, the human dimension is central in war. Why? Because fundamentally, it's a clash between opposing human wills.
So it comes down to people.
Still comes down to people. Technology doesn't change that core dynamic. The document says tech is what infuses war with its intangible moral factors. It specifically talks about the impact of danger, fear, exhaustion, and privation. Real gut-level stuff.
And it directly addresses the tech question.
It does. There's a line that hits even harder today. No degree of technological development or scientific calculation will diminish the human dimension in war. And it follows up. Any doctrine that ignores this is inherently flawed. Period.
Powerful stuff.
Then it breaks down the forces in war into 3 types. The physical, tangible stuff, easy-to-count gear, ammo, casualties, terrain features, stuff we tend to focus on.
Right.
Then the moral forces. These are intangible, and moral here isn't just about ethics, it's broader. Things like resolve, morale, fear, courage, leadership quality, unit cohesion, esprit de corps, the spirit, the belief.
Okay. And the third?
The mental forces, the intellectual side, understanding the situation, making decisions, tactics, strategy, innovation, thinking under pressure.
So physical, moral, mental. What's the key takeaway there?
The assertion that the moral and mental forces exert a greater influence on the nature and outcome of war. It even quotes Napoleon. In war, the moral is to the material as 3-to-1.
3-to-1.
Yeah. Think about what that implies. Even with all our amazing tech, MCDP-1 argues the ultimate weapon is still the human spirit, its will, its courage, its fear. Which means leadership, cultivating those intangibles, is maybe far more critical than just having the best gear.
If those moral and mental factors are really 3 times more important, like Napoleon and MCDP-1 suggest, why does it seem like so much modern military talk, and especially budgets, focuses so heavily, almost obsessively on the material side? Tech advantages, firepower. It feels like a disconnect.
That's a really sharp observation, and it's a constant tension, isn't it? I think part of it is, well, the physical stuff is just easier to measure.
Right, you can count tanks.
Exactly. You can count tanks, you can measure missile range, you can quantify firepower. It's tangible. You can put it in a spreadsheet, justify the budget. How do you put a number on unit morale? How do you measure resolve? How do you budget for courage or esprit de corps?
Much harder. Subjective.
It's totally subjective. And, you know, there's probably a natural human desire for control, for certainty. Advanced technology seems to offer that, even if MCDP-1 argues it's often an illusion when faced with friction and an enemy's will. So the document serves as this constant, almost countercultural nudge saying, hey, don't forget the human, don't forget the mind, the spirit. That's the center.
Okay, so if war isn't just a science, like applying formulas, it's not just an art, like pure creativity, what does MCDP-1 say is the fundamental dynamic? What's really driving it?
It carefully distinguishes between the science of war, the methodical stuff, ballistics, logistics, engineering, and the art of war, the creative application of that knowledge, strategy, intuition, judgment. But it argues that even combining those two doesn't quite capture it. The core idea is that its essential dynamic is the dynamic of competitive human interaction rather than the dynamic of art or science.
Human competition. Back to the wrestlers.
Back to the wrestlers. It's a contest of wills. And because it's this human competition, that's why things like fortitude, perseverance, boldness, esprit, and other traits not explainable by art or science are so essential.
Things you can't quantify.
Exactly. So the final conclusion is pretty clear. The conduct of war is fundamentally a dynamic process of human competition, requiring both the knowledge of science and the creativity of art, but driven ultimately by the power of human will. Understanding that dynamic, that human core, is the base for everything else in the doctrine. It explains why certain ways of leading, training, and commanding are so crucial. #tag the foundation of war as policy and the spectrum of conflict.
Okay, we've got this really deep understanding of war's nature, messy, human, driven by will. Now, how does this shape the theory of war according to MCDP-1? The document says, the single most important thought to understand about our theory is that war must serve policy. Why is that Clausewitzian idea so absolutely central?
It's about connection, connecting the military means to the political ends. It's that direct quote again from Clausewitz. The political object is the goal, war is the means of reaching it, and the means can never be considered in isolation from their purposes.
So military action isn't just for its own sake.
Never. It has to have a purpose, a political objective set by the civilian leadership. Policy is why you're fighting the conscious goals. Politics is about the power dynamics. War is just one tool, one means to achieve those policy goals.
And the level of violence should match the goal.
Precisely. The way you apply military force has to vary depending on what you're trying to achieve politically. You don't nuke a country to settle a fishing dispute, right? It has to be proportional and appropriate.
Right.
And critically, this puts a responsibility on military leaders. They have to advise the political leaders if the constraints being put on them make the mission impossible, or conversely, if military success opens up new political options. It keeps the military tied to the nation's objectives. And building on that, the document talks about two basic strategic ways to impose your will, which tie back to those political goals: incapacitation and erosion.
Okay, what's the difference?
Incapacitation, sometimes called annihilation, is about physically destroying the enemy's ability to fight, wrecking their military forces. This usually goes with unlimited political aims like total surrender, regime change. Think World War II against the Axis.
Got it. And erosion.
Erosion is different. It's more about convincing the enemy that fighting just isn't worth the cost anymore. You use force to raise their pain level, inflict losses, wear down their will until they give up or agree to your terms. This is usually for more limited political objectives, maybe deterring aggression, forcing a policy change, not necessarily overthrowing them.
So understanding which strategy fits the political goal is key.
Absolutely fundamental. It shapes the whole approach, the scale, the intensity, what victory even looks like, and make sure the means actually serve the political ends.
So political aims obviously vary a lot. How does MCDP-1 then think about the whole range of military stuff the Marines might have to do? And what does that demand from the Corps?
Yeah, zooming out, this gets to the core of the Marine Corps identity, that need for incredible versatility. MCDP-1 describes the spectrum of conflict. It's a continuum.
From what to what?
At one end, you have military operations other than war, or MOTW. Think peacekeeping, disaster relief, humanitarian aid, counterinsurgency, maybe even non-combatant evacuations. These usually involve very restrained, selective use of force. Often the goal is deterrence, promoting peace, supporting civilian authorities.
And the other end?
General war. Large-scale, sustained combat, using the full range of military power. Big conventional fights.
What puts a conflict somewhere on that spectrum?
Several things. The political objectives driving it, the military means available, the national will to fight, the concentration of forces, combat power density. But here's a really crucial insight MCDP-1 points out. MOTW and small wars are not simply lesser forms of general war. They're often fundamentally different beasts.
How so?
They often have unique challenges and tight political constraints, ambiguous rules of engagement, complex relationships with civilian agencies, the local population being key terrain. It requires a different mindset, different skills than just planning a big tank battle.
So the takeaway for the Marines?
The absolute requirement for versatility and flexibility to deal with a situation at any intensity across the entire spectrum of conflict. They have to be ready for anything, from handing out food aid to high-intensity combat, and be able to switch gears quickly. That adaptability is non-negotiable for a crisis response force.
Okay, to manage that whole spectrum and connect the big picture down to the individual Marine, MCDP-1 uses these levels of war: strategic, operational, tactical. Can you break those down? And then what happens when they compress, as the document says? That sounds important, especially now.
Yeah, these levels provide a useful framework, but it's also crucial to see how they can blur.
Go starting at the top.
Strategic level, highest level, focuses directly on policy objectives. This is about winning wars, securing peace. It includes national strategy using all tools: diplomatic, info, military, economic, DIE, and military strategy, which is just the military part of achieving those national goals.
Okay, and the bottom.
Tactical level, lowest level. This is about the concepts and methods used to accomplish a particular mission, winning engagements, winning battles, applying firepower and maneuver in specific situations. MCDP-1 is careful to distinguish tactics, which involve judgment, creativity, from techniques and procedures, which are more like drills, routine action.
And the middle, linking them.
That's the operational level. This is the bridge. It's the use of tactical results to attain strategic objectives. Planning and winning campaigns. Deciding when, where, and under what conditions to engage the enemy to achieve those larger strategic goals. It connects the battles to the overall war aim. Now, that compression of levels is really key. In big traditional wars, these levels might seem pretty distinct, but...
Not always.
Right. In nuclear war, obviously, a single decision is instantly strategic. But more commonly today, in MPOTW, counterinsurgency information warfare, a single commander may operate at 2 or even 3 levels simultaneously.
Give an example.
Okay, think about a Marine Lance Corporal on patrol talking to village elders. That's a tactical action. But it could have huge operational or even strategic effects on winning local support, gathering intel, or maybe accidentally sparking conflict. Or a cyber attack, technically tactical, but could have massive strategic consequences.
So even junior Marines can have strategic impact.
Exactly. This compression means everyone, down to the lowest level, needs a broader understanding of the bigger picture, the strategic context. Their tactical actions matter way beyond the immediate firefight. Every Marine is potentially a strategic corporal, as the saying goes.
Right, and at all these levels, there's this constant push and pull, action and reaction. What's the dynamic of initiative and response, offense and defense, that MCDP-1 lays out? Why is that interplay so vital?
It's about controlling the fight's tempo and direction. The document explains initiative and response. Taking the initiative means you dictate the terms of the conflict. You set the pace, you make the enemy react to you. It's clearly the preferred form of action.
And response.
Response is reacting to the enemy's moves. Usually it's about countering them, stopping them, often with the goal of then seizing the initiative yourself. War is this constant flux, this continuous interaction as both sides try to gain or regain the upper hand.
Okay, and how does offense-defense fit in?
Directly related, offense gives you striking power. It's naturally linked to having the initiative. Defense gives you resisting power, preserving yourself. Defense usually have a negative aim, stop the enemy, but it can give you initiative sometimes.
No.
Like setting up an ambush, you force the enemy to attack into your strength. Or a successful defense might wear the enemy down, creating an opportunity for you to launch a counteroffensive and seize the initiative.
So they're not totally separate things.
No, MCDP-1 stresses they cannot exist separately. A good defense needs offensive elements. Clausewitz called it a shield made up of well-directed blows. And any offense needs defensive aspects, protecting your flanks, securing gains, resting troops. It's a constant blend.
And there's a tipping point.
Yeah, the culminating point. That's when an offensive force pushes so far, gets so tired, runs low on supplies, that it just can't sustain the attack anymore. It has to switch to defense, and that's often when it's most vulnerable. Recognizing that point in your own forces and the enemy's is critical. It shows how fluid the transition between offense and defense really is.
Okay, now this next one is absolutely core to the Marine Corps way. Attrition versus maneuver warfare. Can you really unpack that spectrum? What's the philosophy, and why do the Marines lean so heavily towards maneuver?
Yeah, this is huge. And it's important, like you said, MCDP-1 puts them on a spectrum. It explicitly says all warfare involves both maneuver and attrition in some mix. It's not purely one or the other.
Okay, so what's attrition warfare?
Attrition warfare aims for victory through cumulative destruction of the enemy's material assets by superior firepower. Think of it as grinding the enemy down. It's direct, almost industrial. You see the enemy as targets to be destroyed.
How do you measure success?
Quantitatively. Body counts, bomb damage assessment, territory gained, rounds fired. It often needs numerical and material superiority and tends towards centralized control. Think World War I trenches, or maybe some aspects of U.S. strategy in Vietnam, heavy focus on firepower and metrics.
Okay, and maneuver warfare.
Maneuver warfare is different. It comes from wanting to circumvent a problem and attack it from a position of advantage rather than meet it straight on. The goal isn't just destruction, it's to incapacitate the enemy systemically, shatter their cohesion, their ability to function as an effective force.
How do you do that?
By avoiding their strengths, hitting their weaknesses, using speed and surprise. You're trying to get inside their decision cycle, disrupt their command, make them unable to react coherently. Success is often disproportionate to the effort. A smaller force can win big, but it's riskier if you mess it up.
What about firepower and maneuver?
Firepower is still vital, but its main role is often disruption, breaking up enemy formations, suppressing positions, enabling your own movement, contributing to that systemic breakdown, not just racking up kills.
And the Marine Corps choice?
The document is unambiguous. Marine Corps Doctrine today is based principally on warfare by maneuver. It's about fighting smarter, not just harder. Making the enemy irrelevant by attacking their ability to think and act, not just destroying their stuff piece by piece. It's aimed at their mind and cohesion as much as their bodies.
That's a really clear distinction, psychological versus just physical destruction. But thinking historically, have there been times when maybe a purely maneuver approach wasn't enough? Or where attrition was just the only way, even for the Marines. I mean, you can't always just go around the enemy, can you?
No, you're absolutely right. That's a critical point. Reality often forces a blend, and sometimes, yeah, attrition is unavoidable or even necessary.
Like when?
Well, think about some of the really brutal island fights in the Pacific in World War II. Tarawa, Iwo Jima. The enemy was dug in deep, fortified, often determined to fight to the last man. There wasn't much room to maneuver physically. Bypassing wasn't really an option.
So you said a grind.
Pretty much. In situations like that, or maybe intense urban combat where the enemy is embedded in the city, denying them ground, systematically clearing buildings, using overwhelming firepower to reduce their positions, that becomes the necessary path. It turns into a more attritional fight out of necessity.
So MCDP-1 acknowledges that.
It does, implicitly, by saying it's a spectrum and all war involves both. The key isn't to never use attrition. It's about having maneuver as the preferred way, the default mental model, understanding its principles deeply. You use attritional actions when needed, maybe even to create the conditions for a decisive mover later. But the goal is always to impose your will, and sometimes, yeah, that means a tougher, more direct, more attritional slog.
Okay, so if maneuver is the preferred path, what are the universal concepts MCDP-1 points to for actually generating combat power? How do you make maneuver work, especially if you might be outnumbered or outgunned?
It boils down to maximizing your impact, getting the most bang for your buck, essentially. Combat power itself is defined broadly, the total destructive force we can bring to bear on our enemy at a given time. It includes the tangible stuff troops, gear, but also those intangibles we talked about, morale, leadership, training.
And how do you generate more of it or use it better?
Two universal concepts are speed and focus.
Speed seems obvious.
Yeah, but it's not just moving fast across the ground, it's rapidity of action. That applies to tempo, how quickly you can observe, orient, decide, and act, the OD loop, and to movement. MCDP-1 calls speed a weapon, and it stresses relative speed.
Relative to the enemy.
Exactly. If you can consistently act faster than the enemy can react, you seize the initiative, you dictate the fight, you keep them perpetually off balance. Speed is vital for maneuver, it's vital for surprise.
Okay, speed, what about focus?
Focus is about convergence of effects in time and space on some objective. It's concentrating your strength at the decisive point at the critical time. This allows even a smaller force to achieve decisive local superiority.
But you can't be strong everywhere.
Right. Focus requires strict economy and the acceptance of risk elsewhere. You put your main effort where it counts most, even if that means being weaker somewhere else. MCDP-1 says combining speed and focus gives your actions punch or shock effect. It's hitting hard and fast, right where it hurts.
Beyond that physical speed and focus, MCDP-1 also highlights psychological factors that really amplify combat power. What are those, and how do they target the enemy's mind?
Yeah, this gets back to attacking the enemy's will and cohesion. Two big ones here are surprise and boldness.
Surprise seems straightforward.
Well, yes and no. It's more than just catching them off guard. It's a state of disorientation resulting from an unexpected event that degrades the enemy's ability to resist. It's a weapon in itself, MCDP-1 says, a genuine source of combat power because of its psychological effect. It can cause shock, paralysis.
So it's about making them unable to react effectively.
Exactly, making the reaction too slow or just wrong. And you achieve surprise through speed, obviously, but also stealth, ambiguity, and deception.
Break those down.
Deception is making them believe something false about what you're doing or capable of. Ambiguity is making them unsure what to expect, so they have to spread their resources thin, trying to cover all possibilities. Stealth is just keeping them completely in the dark about your actions.
Okay. And boldness.
Boldness is about unhesitatingly exploiting the natural uncertainty of war to pursue major results. Clausewitz called it a genuinely creative force. It's not recklessness, though.
Needs judgment.
Absolutely. Must be tempered with judgment lest it border on recklessness. It's about having the guts to take calculated risks, especially to achieve surprise or seize a fleeting chance. Boldness and surprise are really closely linked. They both work by disrupting the enemy's mental and moral equilibrium, making their physical strength less effective.
So to get those decisive results, commanders need to know where to apply that speed, surprise, and boldness.
Yeah.
How does MCDP-1 help them target the enemy effectively, using concepts like centers of gravity and critical vulnerabilities?
This is all about applying force intelligently, precisely, for maximum effect, not just hitting randomly. Centers of gravity, or COGs, are defined as those characteristics, capabilities, or localities from which a military force derives its freedom of action, physical strength, or will to fight.
So sources of strength.
Exactly. Key sources of enemy strength. Could be their command structure, their elite units, their air defenses, their logistics hub, maybe even the popular support for their cause. These are things you want to attack or neutralize.
And critical vulnerabilities, CVs.
Critical vulnerabilities are complementary. They are a vulnerability that, if exploited, will do the most significant damage to the enemy's ability to resist us. It's about finding the weak points, the soft spots, avoiding hitting their strengths head on the surfaces and finding the gaps.
So a CV is a way to get at a cog.
Precisely. MCDP-1 says a CV is a pathway to attacking a center of gravity. You identify the enemy's key strengths, COGs, then find the vulnerability CVs that provide the best way to undermine those strengths. It focuses your efforts where they'll have the biggest disruptive effect on the enemy's whole system. It's about finding the Achilles heel.
That leads to another interesting idea. How does MCDP-1 tell commanders to actually use the unpredictable, fluid nature of war? It talks about creating and exploiting opportunity. Sounds a bit like embracing the chaos.
It really is about thriving in chaos, not just surviving it. The document points out that opportunities often pop up precisely because of the fog and friction. They can come from our own actions, sure, but also from enemy mistakes or just pure chance.
So you have to be ready to jump on them.
Absolutely. It emphasizes the willingness to ruthlessly exploit these opportunities that generate decisive results. This isn't passive. You need an exploitive mindset. You need that speed, flexibility, boldness, and initiative we've been talking about.
So commanders need to be constantly looking for these chances.
Constantly vigilant, maintaining situational awareness, recognizing when a window opens, maybe the enemy overextends, makes a blunder, a key piece of their tech fails, and then acting decisively immediately before the chance disappears. Exploiting one opportunity often creates more, leading to this cascading effect, this momentum. It really is about dancing with chaos, using its energy to your advantage. #tag, bringing it to life, preparing and conducting war with maneuver.
Okay, we've built this really solid foundation, the nature of war, the theory. Now let's shift to the practical side. What's the core challenge MCDP-1 sees for the Marine Corps and how it actually needs to fight given everything we've discussed?
The challenge, it says, is developing a way to fight that's totally consistent with our understanding of the nature and theory of war and the realities of the modern battlefield. Meaning a concept that works in uncertainty, chaos, fluidity. One that can actually use those conditions against the enemy. It needs to generate superior tempo, work across that whole spectrum of conflict we talked about, recognize those fleeting opportunities, factor in the moral and mental stuff, and crucially, allow Marines to win even when outnumbered or facing a tough enemy, often far from home with limited support.
That's a tall order.
It is. And the Marine Corps answer, its core concept for meeting that challenge, is stated unequivocally: maneuver warfare. And it digs deeper into what maneuver means. It's beyond spatial, not just moving around the enemy on a map. It includes psychological maneuver, affecting their thinking, technological maneuver, using tech advantages smartly, and temporal maneuver, that's maneuver in time.
Faster tempo.
Exactly. Generating a faster operating tempo, cycling through that OD loop faster than the enemy. That's especially critical if you're the smaller force. The main goal is to shatter the enemy's cohesion.
Break their ability to fight as a unit.
Precisely. By bypassing defenses, getting into their system, hitting critical vulnerabilities, making them incapable of resisting effectively. It's about disrupting their moral, mental, and physical cohesion, not just trading them physically.
Firepower's role again.
Still central, but mainly for disruption, enabling maneuver, contributing to that systemic collapse. And this approach inherently demands speed, focus, surprise. And it puts a huge premium on certain human skills.
Like what?
Things like the temperament to cope with uncertainty, flexibility of mind, independence of mind, that initiative and boldness, an exploitive mindset, moral courage, self-discipline, loyalty, and this is key, the ability to think above our own level, understanding the bigger picture. It's a whole philosophy for fighting smart.
Okay, if maneuver warfare is about breaking the enemy system, then understanding that system, orienting on the enemy, seems absolutely critical. How does MCDP-1 guide Marines to do that effectively? It sounds like more than just knowing enemy tank types.
Oh, much more. It emphasizes looking outward, not inward, at your own procedures. Orienting on the enemy is fundamental, precisely because maneuver attacks the enemy system.
So what is the system?
It's whatever constitutes the entity confronting us within our particular sphere. Could be their air defenses, yeah, but also their command network, their logistics, their political structure, their cultural biases and decision-making. You have to understand the unique characteristics that make the enemy system function.
And then find the weak spots.
Exactly. Identify and attack critical vulnerabilities and those centers of gravity within that specific enemy's system. The focus has to be outward on the particular characteristics of the enemy rather than inward on the mechanical execution of predetermined procedures.
Don't just follow your own checklist.
Right. You have to try and get inside their head, understand how they see the world, how they make decisions, and crucially, avoid assuming they think or fight the way we do. It's about finding the inherent logic or illogic of their system and attacking that, creating dilemmas they can't solve according to their own doctrine or habits.
This maneuver approach clearly needs a very different style of command than, say, attrition warfare. How does MCDP-1 define its philosophy of command? What does that mean practically for a platoon commander or a MAGTF commander?
This is absolutely central. You can't do maneuver warfare without the right command philosophy. It's built on empowerment and trust.
So what are the key elements?
First, decentralized command. It's essential for tempo, for coping with chaos. It means subordinate commanders must make decisions on their own initiative based on their understanding of their senior's intent. Why? Because the person at the point of decision naturally knows the real-time situation better.
Pushing authority down.
Way down. It puts huge importance on individual initiative and responsibility. Second, it's human characteristics-based. Command should exploit human traits, boldness, initiative, personality, strength of will, imagination, not just rely on rigid processes or tech. People adapt better than machines.
Okay. What else?
Third, implicit communication. This is fascinating. It's communicating through mutual understanding, using a minimum of key, well-understood phrases, or even anticipating each other's thoughts.
Like reading minds.
Almost. It comes from familiarity and trust, from shared philosophy, from working together a long time. It's that unspoken understanding where a quick phrase, maybe even just a look, conveys complex meaning because you share the same mental model. It's much faster than writing detailed orders.
How do you achieve that?
Encouraging stable teams, direct communication between the people actually doing the work, face-to-face talks over formal reports when possible. Fourth, commanders need to command from where they can best influence things, which is normally well forward.
Up front.
Yeah, to see and sense firsthand the ebb and flow, exert personal influence, shared risk builds huge trust. But you have to balance that with staying connected to the bigger picture. Fifth, commanders have to thrive in chaos. Not just cope, thrive. Use the friction and uncertainty against the enemy who can't handle it as well. Don't chase impossible certainty. Don't micromanage. Adapt.
And this applies in peacetime, too.
Critically, MCDP-1 says, we cannot rightly expect our subordinates to exercise boldness and initiative in the field when they are accustomed to being over-supervised in garrison. You have to practice it constantly. It also requires competent leadership at all levels, trust up and down the chain, and that no zero defects mentality we touched on.
Right, being lenient with honest mistakes from boldness.
Exactly. Punish inaction or timidity harshly, but treat errors from trying too hard, from boldness as learning opportunities. Foster honesty, not people just saying what the boss wants to hear.
That's a really demanding philosophy. You mentioned the no zero defects for boldness. How does MCDP-1 suggest balancing that leniency with accountability? I mean, boldness can go wrong, sometimes badly.
That's the inherent tension, isn't it?
Yeah.
MCDP-1 handles it, I think, by implicitly wrapping it in expectations of professionalism, continuous learning, and strong leadership.
It's not a blank check for recklessness.
Not at all. The leniency for overboldness assumes a few things. It assumes commanders are actively mentoring their people, teaching them judgment. It assumes the subordinate understands the mission, the commander's intent, that topside. Accountability is still there, but the judgment is different.
How so?
The questions become, was the bold action taken within the commander's intent? Was there a reasonable assessment of risk? Was it a genuine attempt to seize an opportunity based on the situation? If yes, even if it fails, it's a teachable moment. If it was just impulsive, reckless, showed poor judgment, or worse, if someone failed to act boldly when they should have, then the accountability is much stricter. It's about cultivating intelligent risk-taking, not just winging it. And that judgment comes from experience, PME, tough training, and honest feedback loops.
Building on that, how does the doctrine tell commanders to proactively shape the fight? To influence things before contact and make those critical decisions during the chaos, instead of just reacting?
It's about thinking ahead and acting decisively. First, shaping the action. This means you have to conceive how we intend to win, figure out what we want to accomplish, why, and how. Identify those enemy CVs that lead to their cogs.
Setting the stage.
Exactly. MCDP-1 says the ideal is to so shape the conditions of war that the result is a matter of course before the main battle even starts. Shaping involves everything: lethal actions, non-lethal actions like information ops or deception, positioning forces, all designed to render the enemy vulnerable to attack, facilitate maneuver, and dictate the time and place for decisive battle. It's about creating favorable conditions.
Okay. And then decision-making in the fight.
Decision-making is crucial because all actions are the result of decisions or of non-decisions. Doing nothing is also a decision, often the worst one, a key tenet. Any decision is generally better than no decision. Why? Time. Whoever can make and implement decisions consistently faster gains a tremendous, often decisive advantage. Back to the OD loop. Get inside their decision cycle. That leads to the famous patent, quote, MCDP-1 includes, a good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week.
Act now.
Act now. Decisions need awareness, creativity, not just following a script, and they require moral courage to make tough decisions in the face of uncertainty and to accept full responsibility for those decisions. Even with incomplete information, you have to act to maintain tempo and initiative.
Mission tactics and commanders intended, these feel like the absolute bedrock of making that decentralized command philosophy work. Can you break down how they function together to empower people but keep everyone pulling in the same direction? Seems like two sides of the same coin.
They absolutely are. You can't really have one without the other working well. They're the engine of decentralized command.
So mission tactics first.
Mission tactics means assigning a subordinate mission without specifying how the mission must be accomplished. You tell them what needs to be done and why, but not how. This gives them the freedom and establishes the duty for the subordinate to take whatever steps deemed necessary based on the situation they actually encounter.
Benefits.
Frees up senior commanders from the weeds, allows for much faster tempo because subordinates don't have to constantly ask permission. They can adapt on the fly. It's like a contract. The senior provides the goal, the resources, the support. The subordinate uses their initiative to achieve the goal, acting in conformity with the intent of the senior. They need that top sight, understanding how their piece fits the whole puzzle.
Which leads to commander's intent.
Exactly. Commander's intent is the tool that makes mission tactics work without chaos. It ensures that harmonious initiative. Every mission order has a task, the what, and an intent, the why. And MCDP-1 is clear. Of the two, the intent is predominant.
The why is more important than the what's.
Yes, because the situation might change, making the original what impossible or irrelevant. But if the subordinate understands the why, the purpose behind the task, they can adapt their actions, maybe do something completely different than originally planned, but still achieve the commander's purpose.
How is intent communicated?
It needs to flow top-down so everyone understands the context for their actions, maybe 2 levels up. It should be brief and compelling, often using that phrase, in order to. For example, seize Hill 485 in order to prevent the enemy from observing our main assault. That in order to part is the critical intent. It allows disciplined initiative, not just freelancing.
Okay, so you've got the intent, you've got mission tactics, empowering people. How do Marines then actually apply these ideas on the ground? How do they exploit weaknesses and create those dilemmas for the enemy using different weapons and units together?
This gets down to the tactical nuts and bolts, applying the philosophy. A key concept here is surfaces and gaps.
Hard spots and soft spots.
Pretty much. Surfaces are hard spots, enemy strengths, and gaps are soft spots, enemy weaknesses. The whole idea of maneuver is to avoid enemy strength and focus our efforts against enemy weakness to get into their system.
Are gaps just physical holes in the line?
They can be, like a poorly defended area, but they can also be weaknesses in time, space, or capability. Maybe a gap in their air cover schedule, a known flaw in their command and control, a moment when they're regrouping. They're often fleeting, so you need that speed and flexibility to exploit them.
How do you find them?
Sometimes through reconnaissance pull, where your scouts find a gap and you funnel forces through it. Other times maybe through analysis command push, where you direct forces based on predicted weaknesses. Recon pull is often preferred because it's based on real-time info.
Okay, and creating dilemmas.
That's where combined arms comes in. It's not just using different weapons. It's the full integration of arms in such a way that to counteract one, the enemy must become more vulnerable to another. You're trying to pose the enemy not just with a problem, but with a dilemma, a no-win situation.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The fire team example MCDP-1 uses. The automatic rifleman pins the enemy down with suppressing fire. To avoid that fare, the enemy has to duck behind cover, which makes them vulnerable to the grenadier lobbing a grenade in. They're caught. Or, on a larger scale, using artillery to force enemy tanks to button up and move, which then makes them easier targets for close air support. You hit them with multiple threats simultaneously from different directions, different domains, so defending against one makes them weak to another. That creates shock, confusion, and paralysis.
It's clear MCDP-1 is all about how Marines fight, but it also has a whole chapter on preparing for war. How does this maneuver philosophy, this way of thinking, shape what the Marine Corps does in peacetime before the shooting starts? Sounds like it influences everything.
It absolutely has to, or the philosophy is just talk. MCDP-1 is adamant. During times of peace, the most important task of any military is to prepare for war. Everything done in garrison, all peacetime activities, should focus on achieving combat readiness.
So how does that play out?
It touches everything. Force planning, designing the future force based on these warfighting concepts, organization, structuring units for warfighting and then adapted for peacetime, focusing on those deployable combined arms ADGTS, building habitual relationships between units so they know how to work together.
Professionalism.
Huge emphasis, demands competence. Every Marine, a student of the art and science of war, reinforces that no zero defects idea, tolerance for mistakes from boldness, intolerance for inaction, needs trust and honesty.
What about training?
Training is called the main effort of a peacetime military. Focus on basics, yes, but also decentralized training, letting junior leaders train their own units, and critically making exercises realistic, not just scripted drills, but exercises with a thinking, adapting opponents, opposing wills to practice the art of war, forcing decisions under pressure, and honest critiques afterward, focusing on the why behind decisions, not just the outcome, learning from mistakes.
And education.
Yeah.
EME.
PME is designed to create creative thinking leaders. It's seen as a shared duty. The formal schools, the commander mentoring their Marines, and the individual Marine having a responsibility to study the profession of arms. Because, as it says, the mind is an officer's principal weapon.
How about personnel and equipment?
Personnel management should assign people based on ability and temperament, not just slots. Foster stability in units for cohesion. Reward initiative and responsibility taking. For equipping, gear should be simple, reliable, maintainable, interoperable. Focus on lift to get Marines where they need to go. But there are warnings.
Warnings?
Yeah, warnings against over-reliance on technology and also failing to make the most of the tech you do have, and a really specific caution. Don't let fancy information systems lead to precise, positive control over subordinates, because that's incompatible with the Marine Corps philosophy of command. Tech serves the philosophy, not the other way around. Hashtag, tag, outro.
Wow. We have covered a lot of ground today, really unpacking MCDP-1. What strikes me most, wrapping up, is that this isn't just a field manual. It's not a checklist. It's really an invitation to a whole way of thinking about conflict, about competition. It's a state of mind, like it says, built on bold will, sharp thinking, initiative, grabbing opportunities.
Absolutely. It's less about specific techniques and more about the underlying approach.
Yeah, the core isn't just physical destruction. It's about shattering the enemy morally and physically by paralyzing and confounding them, by avoiding their strength, by quickly and aggressively exploiting their vulnerabilities, and by striking them in the way that will hurt them most. It really is, as the end of the book says, a philosophy for fighting smart.
So, for all of you listening, whether you're currently serving, maybe you're a veteran, maybe a military scholar, or just interested as you continue your own thinking about this, here are a few reflective questions to maybe chew on. First, those enduring features of war, friction, uncertainty, disorder, how do they show up differently in today's world? Thinking about multi-domain operations, cyber, information warfare, are there new kinds of gaps, new vulnerabilities that these complex environments create? Maybe things not even fully imagined back in '97. Second, MCDP-1 hammers home that moral and mental forces are dominant. In our age of AI, autonomous systems, constant information barrages, what are the most vital ways, maybe even unconventional ways, that leaders today can actually build and sustain that will, courage, morale, esprit de corps? And how do we even measure that in these less tangible modern battlefields? And third, the doctrine demands that leaders think above our own level and act in sync with the bigger picture, that top side. How can we effectively teach that, train for it, and reward it throughout a whole career, from a private right up to a general, especially when things change so fast and forces are often so spread out?
Those are some deep, challenging questions. Excellent food for thought. We really encourage all of you listening to maybe pick up MCDP 1 again or for the first time. Read it cover to cover, like the Commandant's intended, and keep this conversation going in your own units, your own studies.
Definitely worth revisiting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing your insights today, and thank you all for tuning in to this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.